Well, Cleveland, this is what you've been waiting for. Playoff football has finally arrived on the shores of Lake Erie. The Cleveland Browns are the number 5 seed in the AFC playoffs starting this weekend. And as Kevin Stefanski told us just a little bit ago, they're pretty glad they're the first game out of the gate because they don't want to have to sit around and wait any longer than they have to. Brendan Gulick, Spencer German with you, part of our Browns practice report here on Browns Digest. If you're just new to the channel, thanks for hanging out. You can check us out, brownsdigest.com. We got all the latest news and info on the team, certainly as we gear up for what we hope is a long playoff run. Could be one game, could be 5 weeks. Who knows? But certainly this team is good enough, Spence, to make a deep run, and there's a lot of reasons why this is a fun group to follow. There's so much to believe in right now if you're a Cleveland fan. And I think the best news here is that the Browns are reasonably healthy. There aren't really any huge surprises at this point in the week and at this point in the season.
Yeah, Joe Flacco, I saw earlier, had the quote about just what it takes to have that playoff mentality. And it's a lot of this, like, one game at a time sort of structure to the week as you approach it. You're not thinking ahead of like, oh, we got this game on this date or that game on that date. And I found that ironic because I feel like we've been talking about that mentality with this team for, I don't know, 10 weeks now. Like
every week.
Yeah. It's been almost the just the mantra, their coat of arms, if you will. Like that's just kind of how they've done things all season. And it really has felt like ever since the Deshaun injury after week 10, that this team has almost treated every game from that stretch on like a playoff game, knowing everyone's counting them out. Nobody thinks they have a shot, and they've continued to prove people wrong. And now you're on this great run with Flacco. So it kind of just feels like we know the stakes are a little higher, and you can feel in the air here in Northeast Ohio, there's a palpability to it. But, it almost just feels like business as usual from inside the building and from our perspective, because this is just kind of how this team's lived all season.
And there's no reason to think that it can't continue to work either. It's one thing if you kind of limp into the playoffs and you feel like, this isn't going to go anywhere. The bottom's falling out of this for whatever reason. Great run, but not going to happen. The Browns have won regularly in spite of all of this adversity all year. And so you go into the postseason with a roster that frankly couldn't look much different than what you had in training camp. And now you kind of gear up for season number 2. And, as currently constructed, this feels like a team that can make a deep run. And I think there's a lot of people around the nation now starting to realize, you know what? Don't count out the Cleveland Browns, because if they play defense like that, and with this resurgence we've seen from Joe Flacco, absolutely that team is capable of making a Super Bowl run. They beat the top seed in both conferences.
I think the defense is the biggest thing you kind of hang your hat on going into. And like, it's the old cliche, defense wins championships. And on some level, I think that's evolved over time. Like, offense obviously matters a lot now more than ever in the NFL. And these teams that can put up a lot of points generally are making deep runs in the playoffs. But if you have a defense that can also slow them down, you give yourself a chance. And we see also, like, in the biggest games, sometimes that defense does matter when you need a stop in a big moment. And so I think the fact that they have that, I think the fact that they have, I'm trying to say his name, using it for other words, the fact that they have Joe Flacco, who's playing some of the best football of his life and is just on this ridiculous tear, 300 plus games in 4 straight, never been done in the Browns history. I mean, you feel confident about that, and you feel confident about the fact that it's a guy who has done it on that stage and at this level before in the postseason, has a Super Bowl MVP, has a Super Bowl ring. So that's obviously a big factor. And then I think the third thing, Brendan, just kind of goes back to what we talked at the top, just the mentality of this team, the fact that they have dealt with so many injuries this year, so much adversity, so many people counting them out, and they just stay so sort of mild-mannered, level-headed about it. It's that next man up thing, and that's such a cliche. But in this season in particular, for these Cleveland Browns, they have lived that to a T, and it's worked to a T. It's a testament to the coaching staff and what they've done, but it's remarkable.
And that's where I think you hit the nail on the head there. How often you see teams that make runs that kind of like take on the personality of their coaching staff, and Kevin Stefanski is about as like monotonous, even-keeled as anybody in the league. You rarely see him crack a smile on the sideline. It happens from time to time, but it's not a regular thing. He's not a super animated, boisterous, look at me coach. He's pretty locked in and focused on right here, right now. And he doesn't ride that roller coaster too much. And so the combination of, I think, his personality and some veteran guys that are able to just be where their feet are, it's made for a fun group to follow. While on the other side, on defense, you see guys taking on Jim Schwartz's personality. It is a little bit more animated. It is more fun. They're playing with a ton of swag, and they know they're really good. And so now you're going to bring that mentality down to Houston against a team that, yes, you beat on Christmas Eve. Amari Cooper had a terrific performance in that game, one of the all-time great performances in Cleveland Browns history. It's going to be hard to replicate that on any given game, let alone against the same team, right? But the obvious discussion here around Houston is that obviously they have CJ Stroud playing in this game where they didn't the last time around, and trying to figure out truly how much difference he makes. He's made enough of a difference to take a team that had the number 2 overall pick last year to be a division champion and go to the playoffs. And for people in the state of Ohio, they know CJ's the real deal.
Well, and real quick on the personality thing, I think what's interesting about it too is they kind of balance each other out in that way. I mean, there's been criticisms of Stefanski the last couple of years, like, oh, he's not animated enough. So to have Jim Schwartz now kind of alongside to kind of give you that, I think it's been like the perfect storm. So, and that's again, credit to Stefanski for making the right choice in his defensive coordinator selection last offseason. But yeah, with the presence of Stroud, it certainly changes the game plan a little bit because that guy is playing out of his mind right now. Pretty much a shoo-in to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's been so phenomenal, and we know him well just from his days at Ohio State, obviously. But we know what he's capable of. I think the biggest thing going into this game that I look at, though, that gives me some confidence is, yes, it's CJ Stroud. He's been great, but I count on, we mentioned his name, like Jim Schwartz in that defense. Is he really going to let a rookie quarterback, derail their postseason run before it really gets started? So I think that should give Browns fans confidence. But yeah, it changes the game plan a little bit. It changes the math a little bit. But as much as it's maybe gives you a little bit more fear about this one, I don't know that Browns fans should be going into this game feeling like overly concerned or overly worried. I think if anything, it makes the playing field a little bit more level, which is kind of seen in the Vegas line being 1.5 in favor of the Browns. But at the same time, I think you go in with some confidence that you can get the job done.
I think, we should wrap with a little Browns news, just the idea that Grant Delpit may or may not be available. Kevin Stefanski was a bit non-committal on that, where he did acknowledge that it was unlikely that Dustin Hopkins would be available this weekend. So probably continue to see Riley kicking for Cleveland. And in terms of what I saw at practice for the, 10 minutes of stretching and 10 minutes or so of some individual drills, there were a whole bunch of guys not out there today. Myles Garrett not out there. Joel Bitonio, David Njoku, Kareem Hunt, Pierre Strong, Amari Cooper, and several others that were not on the practice field. At this point, reps are important, but I think there's nothing more important than making sure that, Saturday at 4:30 when that ball goes in the air, you are as healthy and ready as possible.
Yeah, I think for a lot of those guys, that's kind of, normal practice, start of the work week, start of the week of practice. They kind of do sit and get a little bit of extra rest. So nothing concerning there. I am a little worried, I will say, about Dustin Hopkins. Riley Patterson's been fine, but a guy who's been so important to this season. We just put up a piece over on the site, BrownsDigest.com, about our, the accolades for the season, and we did like a team MVP and all this. And just for the heck of it, I picked Dustin Hopkins because he has single-handedly won you 3 games this year, and that Colts game was a big one that he helped you win with the number of field goals he made and a bunch from 50 yards. And it stinks for him because he was on track to obviously top Jim Brown for the most points in the season, and that he comes a little bit short of that. But I think you can probably get past this round without him, but you want to see him hopefully return at some point during the postseason and just give you that extra boost in special teams, knowing, hey, if we got to go out and make a big kick, we believe that this guy's going to get the job done.
One last injury note. I did verify this. So last week when Anthony Walker was put on injured reserve, he had missed the previous 3 games without going on IR. And I wanted to verify it is not something that can be retroactively applied. Once you go on IR, that's when the clock starts. So essentially, by the letter of the law, if the Browns made the Super Bowl, Anthony Walker could come back, but he would not be allowed to come back prior to that, even though he hasn't played the last couple weeks. There's a chance. You never know. You want to walk on the field, that's for sure. That's for sure. Well, we got plenty more coming throughout the rest of the week, and certainly hope you'll join us on BrownsDigest.com and here on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to this video so that we can continue to provide coverage for you just like this all season. For Spencer German, I'm Brendan Gulick. We'll see you soon back in Berea. Tomorrow, the coordinators talk. We'll have Kevin Stefanski again on Thursday before the team travels on Friday. Open locker rooms as well, so you can hear from some of the players. We got you covered here with Browns Digest.